welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, India's largest platform for entrepreneurs. We bring your thoughts, your opinions onto a national platform and connect you with experts across different industries. Today, we're continuing our special coverage on the travel and tourism industry, how badly it has been hit in 2020 and now with the second wave of the pandemic, and what businesses should be looking at when it comes to de-risking strategy. All of that and much more being posed to our very special guest joining us for the first time here on the Leaders of Tomorrow, Amanpreet Bajaj. He is the head India, Southeast Asia, Hong Kong and Taiwan at Airbnb. Amanpreet, thanks for your time here on the show. What was 2020 like, personally, professionally, the entire pandemic for you? Just give us a sense of that.
Thank you for having me, Sunanda. And I think we all would agree that the COVID-19 pandemic has been an unprecedented crisis. And there continues to be significant uncertainty and volatility even today. And it's going to be hard to predict the future. But what we know is that travel as a segment is very resilient and it will recover. We did see recovery come back as soon as the cases were coming down, but the speed of recovery is now going to be influenced by the decisions that key stakeholders take. And for us, I would say that the key stakeholders are decisions taken by the government, the healthcare authorities, and the industry today. But I think we all would agree that right now the safety and well-being and the health is the topmost priority, and that is what we all need to prioritize as industry players. It's been a challenging year for the entire industry per se. And if you talk about us, I would say that the early days of the pandemic did pose a huge challenge, but we were determined to continue supporting all our key stakeholders. So whether it was our guest community, the host community, the employees, or the community at large during this time.
So your advice for a small business which is watching today's interview to say, this is perhaps what you should do when it comes to really managing the kind of changes and the external shocks that are taking place. What advice would you have?
What we know is that travel as it looked like in the past, it's not going to be the same again. And I think we got a glimpse of that as soon as we started seeing some recovery. Travel is becoming intrinsically local. More people are now looking at domestic destinations. People are driving to nearby destinations and experiencing local culture and immersing themselves in the local neighborhoods, etc. And what we've also seen is that there is a growing trend towards more responsible behavior towards the choices that people are making. So, choice for responsible travel or sustainable options is something that we're seeing on the rise. As a company, it is extremely important as entrepreneurs, as companies, that we kind of understand these trends and kind of adapt, learn, and quickly grow. If you look at it, when the pandemic hit, no company had the playbook to deal with a crisis of this dimension. In the absence of a playbook, companies had to evolve, they had to adapt, and they had to learn from whatever they were seeing as signals from the community, and then kind of respond to that. If you look at us, what we did, we went back to our roots, and what we did was to look at all key stakeholders that we have, whether it's our guests or our hosts, and look at making sure that we are providing options and initiatives that kind of benefit them or cater to their needs. So for example, for the guests at the time of the crisis, it was very important to provide them flexible stay options as well as flexible policies, and we responded by making sure that our guests had that. For our hosts who were impacted by these cancellations, and many of our hosts depend on the income that they earn from the platform, we made sure that there was financial relief available through a super host fund program and a host fund program that we put in place. What we also did was we understood the pulse at that point of time, and that was health, safety, and well-being. So I think the advice I would give to entrepreneurs is very simple. Every crisis provides an opportunity. And I think it's very important to be optimistic in that opportunity and kind of see what areas we can learn from, adapt, and kind of pilot very quickly and be able to, create solutions for the issues that the community is having. The other thing that I think we all would agree the pandemic has kind of reinforced is the fact that what could have taken years in terms of digital penetration has happened within months. and so a lot of businesses were forced to come online. And we have seen in the past that technology is a great enabler, and we strongly believe in that even now. And as businesses and small businesses, small hospitality businesses, for example, small homestay owners, the moment they come online, they're able to get multiple benefits from that move. For example, we saw in the past that when homestay owners started adapting to digital platforms, they were able to increase their outreach in terms of the number of consumers they could reach. They were able to increase the revenue with the new bookings that were coming from newer people. They were able to increase their occupancy, and that has been a powerful play. In a stroke, what you can do is have access to the entire world through the digital platforms. And I think digital penetration is something that this pandemic has accelerated, and it will continue to accelerate. And I think one advice to entrepreneurs is to embrace technology and these digital platforms. And I think go back to the fundamentals. Most importantly, listen to your customer, listen to your community, see what they need, and kind of respond to that. So I think what we are seeing is definitely a change in the consumer sentiment or consumer preferences. We are positive about the fact that as people travel, there is a shift in the way they want to travel, and we have conducted multiple surveys, and there are some very interesting findings out of these surveys. People, about 50, we conducted a survey a few months ago with YouGov, and it was very clear from the findings that a majority of Indians, like around 57 to 60%, are wanting to travel in 2021. And this is being led by millennials and Gen Z. But when they travel, they're considering smaller communities, offbeat destinations, unique, authentic stays like farm stays, rural stays, affordable homestays over mass tourism experiences. And I think this is a profound shift that we are seeing. This is one of the ways we believe that there will be redistribution of travel spends to these smaller communities and areas that are off the beaten track. And what this does is brings back, economic activity and economic empowerment in these underserved areas in the past. If you look at some of the old reports and data on homestays, it shows very clearly that homestays as an activity, or managing homestays as an activity, has a significant employment multiplier effect. And even our recent study, that I talked about with YouGov, clearly shows that now travelers are looking for these newer experiences in the form of whether it's heritage homes, Havelis, farm stays, villas, all of this. And I think what you would see is that as travel dollars get redistributed into these smaller communities, and into these underserved areas, it is going to benefit the local economy in a bigger way. What we also know is that when, say, for example, people stay in smaller neighborhoods, in smaller towns, in less urban destinations, the benefits of that economic activity is not only restricted with the hosts that are hosting these guests, but it also benefits the local restaurant. It also benefits the local artisan. It also creates economic opportunity and employment opportunity for, say, the local driver. And so this kind of travel, which is more authentic, which is off the beaten track, and this is something that is now people are preferring, primarily because they want more control over their surroundings in secluded places, is going to bring the much needed redistribution of economics of travel into the smaller communities. And I think that is a key trend that we will continue to see as we move beyond 2021. And I think there are learnings for almost all the industry players in this particular trend that we are seeing.
What does crisis communication then look like to you, Amanpreet? Based on your own experience, based on what you did really at Airbnb, communicating to your employees and to your different stakeholders, your advice for someone watching today's experiment?
So I think, during a crisis of this dimension, when people were in their homes and the only way to connect was online, it was very important to continue to connect across multiple platforms. I think what we did as Airbnb was to go back and connect with our host community and listen to them, as I shared earlier, and many ideas as well as many concerns came through from those communication initiatives, and we were able to then create programs that kind of cater to the needs. It's very simple. I think you need to go and talk to the consumers. You need to understand what their problems are and kind of continue to serve their interests. Internally, as a company, it was very important for and it would be important for any organization, I would say, to clearly articulate the strategy to kind of respond to some of these changes that are coming in, and making sure that you are connected with all the employees at all levels. And I think we did this very well, with starting from a CEO who conducted multiple CEO Q&A sessions across the globe and made sure that he was there to answer the queries of all employees on a weekly basis. And I think also make sure that we identify all key stakeholders, whether it's your board, whether it's your consumers, whether it's your employees, and you have a cadence of appropriate communication with them. The need to communicate clearly and timely has been something that has been a great learning for us during the pandemic.
I have to take a quick break, Amanpreet. We're back in just a moment. Do you think perhaps that the government's response this time around, the second wave, has been far better compared to what we've seen previously?
The safety and well-being of the community and of people of the nation is topmost priority. And I think what we've seen from the government, whether it was introduction of specific protocols, introduction of guidelines, healthcare guidelines, or even now what we see, the expediting of the vaccination rollout, I think these are all the key steps in the direction to make sure that we are able to create an environment where people can get back to their work and people can start traveling again.
Welcome back with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow, and we're continuing our focus on the hospitality and tourism industry in the wake of the second wave of the pandemic. So what's the role of the government then when it comes to really managing the kind of changes that are taking place around us as we speak? Managing the kind of financial losses on one hand, the expectations that the industry has on the other. Do you think perhaps that the government's response this time around, the second wave, has been far better compared to what we've seen previously?
I think, the way we look at it, it has been an unprecedented crisis. And as I said, there has been no playbook in the past to kind of deal with something in today's world. What I would say is that at this point of time, for all stakeholders, whether it's the government or the healthcare authorities or the industry, the safety and well-being of the community and of people of the nation is topmost priority. And I think what we've seen from the government, whether it was introduction of specific protocols, introduction of guidelines, healthcare guidelines, or even now what we see, the expediting of the vaccination rollout, I think these are all the key steps in the direction to make sure that we are able to create an environment where people can get back to their work and people can start traveling again. And I think if we all come together and make sure that we are focused on the key priorities right now, then I think the recovery is going to be much faster. We learned that in the past as well, that as soon as the cases came down and people went back to work and people started traveling, there was economic activity that got spurred again. And I do believe that travel is a resilient sector. And we've seen that it has recovered from multiple shocks in the past, and it will continue to be resilient because of the innate human need to kind of desire, to connect as well as experience new cultures. And so we would be, as industry players, we all would need to come together and make sure that right now the safety and well-being is the topmost priority, and I think the government is also prioritizing that.
The travel industry heavily dependent, of course, on the different stakeholders. So when it comes to really marketing in a time like this, when there's so much uncertainty, when you don't know, where there's going to be any sort of business continuity, what's your advice to someone watching today's interview?
Sure. Airbnb has a very strong brand, and I'll talk about what we saw in 2019. As our priorities shifted, as some of our key performance indicators fluctuated based on the changing preferences of consumers, what we saw that we reduced some of our performance marketing initiatives, but also become more creative in terms of having an outreach to our host community as well as the guest community. What we saw was something very remarkable. Our traffic levels came to almost 95% of the levels of 2019 without those increased marketing spends. And this shows the power of the brand, and that our brand was inherently very strong. As we move ahead in India, we are more focused on educating and inspiring our guests and hosts through our PR activities as well as our brand marketing initiatives. And I'll be very open in terms of talking what has worked for us. I think there are a couple of things that I would give advice to some of the budding companies and entrepreneurs from a branding perspective. It is very important to be, your brand to kind of reflect what you stand for. As Airbnb, our brand is to, our vision, our mission is to create a world where anyone can belong anywhere. And I think that is what gets reflected. And we make this happen through meaningful connections between humans when they travel. That kind of creates, authentic experiences for all. And I think this is something that you see in some of the advertisements or in the messaging that we have. What I would say is that it is very important for companies to understand how to become a part of the cultural zeitgeist of a specific community or a country, right? And for us, if you would have seen, our community is full of a diverse set of people. There's a lot of people across, the film industry, the sports fraternity, or the creative arts fraternity already use Airbnb. And what we've been able to do with them in the past is make sure that we let them also showcase their experiences on some of our social platforms, and that kind of creates a connect between their audiences and our brand. So I think it goes down to the basics: very clear articulation of what you stand for as a company, what is the value proposition for your consumers, is something that works the best when it comes to sharing your message across with your community.
So 2022, we're sitting at the beginning of the new fiscal. What's that looking like to you?
So I won't get into specific numbers per se in terms of an outlook per se, but what I'll say is that we are definitely seeing consumer shifts or preference shifts happening. What we believe in 2021 and 2022, travel is intrinsically going to be more domestic. Travel is going to be more local. I think many people are going to get into their cars, drive for a few hundred kilometers, and experience a new neighborhood, a new town, and immerse themselves into new experiences. And I think these are amazing opportunities for young entrepreneurs to create these experiences and also adopt digital technologies, given the massive digital penetration and adaptation that we have seen, that is only going to get accelerated as we move forward. And so travel, as it becomes more domestic, and I think it is a great news for our country. When the borders are not open, most of the people who would have gone overseas for their, say, summer holidays are more likely to now experience domestic destinations. And the good part is that our country is so rich in terms of the diversity and the offerings that it has to offer, that this is a great opportunity for domestic home, travel entrepreneurs to kind of adapt, create these unique experiences that provide these authentic, exposure, and welcome guests from across the country.
What's the role when it comes to women entrepreneurs in the travel and tourism industry, Amanpreet?
I think one thing that I'll talk about is definitely what we have seen, that our community has been always powered by women, and that is still true today. We believe that women hosts continue to play an immensely significant role in the travel and tourism sector across the world, as well as in our country, and indeed are going to drive the future of travel and the new shifts that we are seeing in travel. More women than men are Airbnb hosts globally, and we are committed to make sure that this number also kind of reflects even in India. So what we have done over the last few years is get into many community partnerships aimed at economically empowering and creating opportunities for women hosts across India. To name a few, we have a partnership with Seva, which is a self-help group, and what we have done with them is to create rural homestay entrepreneurs in the state of Gujarat. Today we have more than 45 hosts from the Self-Employed Women's Association of India, and they are able to kind of create these opportunities in some of the underserved rural towns, and create financial opportunities and economic opportunities for the local neighborhoods. And there are some very powerful stories that have come out based on the experiences of some of these women hosts. We are also, partnered in the past with the National Commission of Women, again, primarily focused at creating more meaningful opportunities through trainings, workshops, so that more women can take up hosting. And I think in the last 12 to 14 months, given that there were some sectors that obviously also had to face the economic hardships, I think hosting on Airbnb, whether it's online experiences, whether it's experiences where people share their passion, or sharing their homes or secondary homes, has proved to be a key lifeline in terms of providing that supplementary income. And just to give you some numbers, between March 20 to March 2020 to February 2021, we noticed that over 30% of our hosts that signed up on the platform were women. And we hope that this trend continues this year. The largest number of women hosts are not only restricted to some of our main towns like Goa, Delhi, Mumbai, but it's also something that is now percolating down to smaller towns, rural districts. And I think as more women hosts take up this opportunity to use the digital platforms and create these hyper local economic opportunities, I think it's good news for the entire industry.
Amanpreet, thanks very much for your time here on the show.
Thank you so much.
Completely out of time on this episode of The Leaders of Tomorrow. Do remember to continue staying home and staying safe and doing everything that you can to ensure the well-being of yourself, your employees and your community and family. It's a wrap for tonight. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.